Actor picks the wrong sound crew to mess with. Here's another little tale from my days working in the entertainment business. Very early on in my career, I managed to get a gig working as a showman, a person hired in just to work the show, on stage electrics and follow spots on a major West End musical. Even though I was nominally a sound engineer, the chance to work on a big show in albeit a different capacity was too good to pass up. When you're a youngster in this industry, you would be daft to turn down such an opportunity, because the experience garnered is invaluable, even if it's not directly related to your primary skill set. We spent around 6 weeks working on the production fit-up. Most of the time I was working on rigging lamps, running cables, installing additional dimmer racks yada. Sometimes, I got to help out the sound crew rigging their kit and thus got to know them quite well. Fast forward to a few months after opening night, some of the electrics showmen, myself included, had managed to pick up the occasional extra work assisting the dame and crew who were permanently hired to the theatre, doing lamp rounds. This is where you go round the entire theatre, front and backstage, replacing burned out lamps, useful extra money. Thus I happened to be in the theatre well before the half-hour call and was hanging out with the sound crew at the sound desk. There were 2 of them, we'll call them Pete and Chris. One would run the faux board for that night's show, while the other would do other jobs like handing out the radio mics to the cast at the half, collect them at the end, and troubleshoot any problems during the show. They'd also swap duties every day. So, we hear the half called and Chris goes off backstage with his box of radio mics to hand them out, while I carry on chatting to Pete. About 10 minutes later, we see Chris returning to the faux desk looking very distressed. Pete asked him what on earth was wrong. It transpired that the male juvenile lead had bollocked out Chris for some utterly trivial problem to the point where he had been reduced to tears. I should point out that this particular actor was not well liked by the crew because of his arrogant and holier-than-thou attitude. This did seriously not sit well with Pete at all. By this time, the audience was beginning to fill the auditorium and you could hear the ambient chatter level going up. Pete then grabbed his headphones and parking one earpiece over his right ear, proceeded to punch in the pre-fade listen button for that actor's channel. A grin then crept over his face. He then brought the channel live and very slowly raised the channel fader. He handed Chris the cans, and a huge grin also spread across his face. Chris then handed me the cans so I could hear what had amused him so much. I listened in, to be confronted by the sound of the actor right in the middle of taking a full throttle dump. We are talking grunts and groans, and levels of flatulence quite the equal of the trumpets that flattened the walls of Jericho. Bear in mind that this sound is now being leaked out into the auditorium, albeit at a level just barely perceptible to the audience. I glanced around at the punters in the stalls and saw that quite a few people were looking around quizzically. I had to struggle to rein in my laughter at the delicious payback, but as it was getting close to Act 1 beginners, I had to go off and take my station, so I high-fived my friends and went through the stage pass door to the electrics crew room. To be confronted by my colleagues falling about in hysterics. It was then that I became aware of a peculiarity with the show relay. For context, the show relay is a microphone front of house and a bunch of speakers all over the backstage and dressing room areas that allow cast and crew to listen into the progress of a show. Due to a curiosity of its design, what was just barely audible out front was now being hugely magnified backstage. The entire cast and crew, no matter where they were being subjected to the sounds of our actor dropping the kids off at the pool at practically full volume. For the rest of the show, the hapless idiot had to contend with the entire cast and crew giggling uncontrollably whenever he went past, and all the while remained completely oblivious to the reason why, as the one place there were no show relay speakers was in the toilets. Hell yeah. As a tech crew member I have to put up with a lot of stuck-up actors. Sound gives you a bit too much power sometimes, I got to admit. I was listening to microphones trying to deduce a problem and find out who was squeaking. They were muted on the audience's speakers so no one could hear them but me. Though the headphones I heard someone talking about their nasty rash. was interesting. On my A2 days, I was told this. If you're listening less for problems and more for content, it's time to stop. Well, what a hilariously crappy thing to do to someone who deserved it. I see what you did there. He did it for shits and giggles. As a performing musician, I learned long ago to be as nice as humanly possible to the sound engineer, and to buy him a drink if at all possible. The difference it can make is astounding, plus, he probably gets shit on all the time and blamed for being unable to make shit bands sound good. And yes, sorry, I've yet to run into a woman sound engineer, but it'd be cool. I've met a couple. Only a couple though. Met a few more female lighting techs. While the gender balance in lighting still isn't great, it's doing better than the audio world. Source: I'm a female lighting tech.